Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast. I'm your host, Drew, also known as Redkacheek, and we are previewing the Genesis Invitational. Pretty good week last week. 20K on Thursday for Showdown, which is good. Kind of tread water the next 2 days and into Sunday. The weather on Sunday was just a question mark. And honestly, I think the split was pretty close. There were some low scores in the morning and then a couple that closed out pretty good afternoons or early afternoons, I guess. But overall, pretty good week. So what we're going to do today, just like a typical podcast, we'll look at the course preview, talk through the stats and stuff like that, everything that you're familiar with. Today is Monday. We're going to do another show tomorrow is the plan. I got a guest on tap. So when I get the time nailed down, and I'll announce who that is, but you guys will be pretty familiar with it. He's he's been around Fantasy Golf Bag for quite some time and in the betting DFS space for probably close to 10 years now. Good friend. So we'll announce that, and that'll be on Tuesday night. So looking forward to a chit chat and talk through the models and kind of how you approach betting, statistics, etc. So I don't think I have too much. I'm going to do my best to not go into any tangents. We're just going to talk the data and not argue the data so much, because I think it's pretty evident when we look at this stuff every week what we can focus on. And then I'll obviously feature in FGB Studio today. We have the new templates added to Studio. So if you want to, we'll look at it, but you can add my own as a starting point. So you can go into the templates and add a template, and mine is saved already for this week. You can add your own. So if you want to go back and back test past events, if you want to tweak stuff, if you have some crazy idea, which honestly, I would never argue with anybody. We try to make it pretty easy and available and pretty easy to navigate the course preview pro and like what stats are actually important for any given week. And there's a lot of crossover every single week, or overlap, which is to be expected because we're modeling golf. We're not trying to nitpick the TGL in some weird hole. But I'll walk through the new templates. And so you can go back to 2023, 2024 for the Genesis Invitational, throw in anything you want, see how that actually worked out in retrospect. And you can go back to 2022, 2021, whatever, and then apply it to this week, which is what we're going to end up doing at the end of this show. So with that being said, let's go ahead and to Course Preview Pro. I got a couple other tools on tap that we'll just quickly glance at. These are all free. The Course Preview Pro is obviously a premium tool, but we'll look at like the odds to price value, which we saw some interesting ones last week. We could look at the line movement and the betting tool. That's I don't know if that one's free or not. The outright model's free. The live model is currently free. But did want to look at the odds to price values because we saw a few last week that had drastically different pricing when it came out versus what Vegas, or at least where the lines end up moving for their outright numbers. So we'll look at that and just see if anybody pops. Generally speaking, we'll talk about it when I get there. I don't want to go into detail on that now. So let's just talk about the golf course and we'll get right into it. Let me pull myself off of here so you can see some things a little bit better. And we'll dive into it. So this year, back at Riviera Country Club last year, I think they had the wildfire. So they did not host it here. I think they went back-to-back at Torrey, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember now last year. But they did not play it here. Hideki was the last winner here in 2024 at 17 under. 2023 was John Rahm, 17 under. Joaquin Niemann at 19 under in 2022. 2021 was Max Homa at -12. And then Adam Scott in 2020 at -11. Obviously, this is a stacked field most years anyways. So it's no surprise that like some of these names are, oh yeah, they're probably were one of the best players. We could look at the lead-in form for those guys. I guess we can just jump to it really quickly. Here are the odds. So Hideki was 68-1. Rahm was 8-1. He was the favorite. I assume he was the favorite in 23. Niemann was 55-1. Homa was 72-1. Adam Scott was 34-1. Average odds for the last 10 years, or however many years we have odds. It might be like 5 or 6, just under 50 to 1. So definitely the better players tend to do pretty well here, which is not too surprising. Like, this is a pretty demanding golf course that you can't really fluke it, at least for 4 rounds, which in my opinion is good from a betting perspective, and certainly a DFS perspective. It keeps your focus a little bit more narrow. We'll go ahead and talk about the golf course for what it does matter. So it's a par 71, 7,300 yards. So from a par to yardage ratio, yeah, it seems a little bit, not long for sure, but it's definitely on the longer side for a par 71. You can see the average par 3 is just under 200 yards, average par 4, 441, average par 5, 558. As always, the par 5s are kind of the scoreable holes, especially on a difficult golf course. Number 1 plays extremely under par, almost 3/4 of a shot under par. It's gettable in 2, not too surprising there. It's a pretty nice opening hole. We know about 10 has its own quirks. It actually plays a little bit under par, which is not too surprising. They have the 17th hole, 1/4 of a shot under par, and the 11th hole, the other par 5, plays 0.33 shots under par. The scoring doesn't really matter. I think, and I could probably fault myself for this in the last couple of years. When you look at scoring and you think of, well, I want, guys that are doing well in birdie or better. A lot of those stats are descriptive and not predictive. I think bogey avoidance is probably the most powerful stat, if it's not a strokes gain stat or a spectrum stat, just because you can't fake that for too long. There's only so much. People say, well, bogey avoidance, you could be scrambling. Yeah, but I mean, for 6 months, if you're doing well in bogey avoidance, you're not just scrambling your ass off. I'd be very surprised if you could find anybody that's doing well in the bogey avoidance stat that's not also doing really well in strokes gained tee to green, or just strokes gained total in general, which is one of our key stats every week, obviously, because we're looking at modeling the field, and that is the most relative stat for predicting the outcomes of the upcoming event. That's what's baked into every betting model. That's a good. So again, I think the scoring matters more for DFS projections, not so much for modeling or stats, etc. So hopefully that makes sense. Like, yeah, we could talk through this and like, oh, it's a wide open guys are making birdies everywhere. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't really favor anyone specifically. Like, yeah, the worst players, there's more volatility. It's more open for worse players to have a good week when the scoring's easy. You think about the American Express as just a anecdotal example. But large in a way, like, the scoring doesn't really matter. I could go through all this, like the par 5s are playing under par. You're not going to hear me tout par 5 scoring. That's not a real stat that matters from a modeling perspective. But it does matter for projections, which is all baked into it, not something you have to worry about. All right, we can talk about stats. We can look at the greens and the fairway grasses if you want. I'm not too worried about it. Rough pretty low, a lot of dog legs, and some tougher drives. If your name's Tiger Woods, he's had some good and bad here over the years, but definitely some tougher tee shots if you're not really driving the ball well. But let's talk about lead-in stats, and then we'll dive into the odds, and we'll look at weather, and then we'll jump into FGB Studio and look at who's kind of my thought process, I guess, for this week, which I already built, but we'll just kind of walk ourselves through it. Because a lot of this stuff is, the DFS content is not evergreen, but I think the topics that we discuss, at least on this podcast and at Fantasy Golf Bag, are evergreen in terms of what you should be analyzing on a given week or using on a given week. So lead-in stats. I think this is big enough you can kind of see it. This is best per stat. We have top correlations, which is every stat for every time frame. We have 5 different time frames we look at. We have 8 weeks, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 24 months. And then we have different round samples within each of those. This week for best per stat, not too surprising. What is surprising, we'll get to here in a second. Total strokes gained, number 1. That just means the best players coming in. You think about Scotty being the best, or he's better than everybody else, he will tend to do better here than somebody that's doing worse than him. On down the line, guy that's gaining 0.5 strokes per round is going to do better than a guy gaining 0.2 strokes per round. Just broadly speaking, across the field, that's just the fact of the matter. And that should be a a very important baseline you should use pretty much every week. Now, the timeline is interesting to me. You can see here, unlike last week where there was a little bit of, hot and short time frames, all of these are deep, which basically means the players that have a really strong baseline of consistency over the last 2 years, really last year, because the number of rounds that we use, it's total strokes gained, birdie or better, which I just talked about, birdie or better not mattering. And honestly, this probably isn't a course most people would even consider birdie or better, but there it is. Spectrum total, bogey avoidance, strokes gained tee to green, and spectrum tee to green. You can see a few of these other ones dip off. All these are coming from like the deep model. We can look through all the top correlations. So you'll see overlap in the actual stats, but this is what I used. You can see total strokes gain, or I could go through each of these. Total strokes gain, birdie or better, spectrum total, bogey avoidance, strokes gained tee to green, spectrum tee to green, all in that 24-month sample, last 100 rounds. So again, 100 rounds could definitely be within a year, but that is what we use for our analysis on this tool here. Then the next group is all mid. So that is I think the 9 month. Yeah, the 9 months. So that is more, you don't think about it, but 9 months ago is basically the summer. So within the last half of a year and into the beginning of 2026, that is this time frame here. And you'll see a lot of the same carryover. Tee to green, total strokes gain. Strokes gain tee to green. That was spectrum tee to green. Strokes gain tee to green. Spectrum total strokes gain. Pretty straightforward. So you can go through any of these, right? Like the things I click through just more out of curiosity is like, okay, well, those are the top stats for predicting the outcome of this event in the past 5 years, 2020 through 2024. Why isn't there a lot of recent form? Let's go look at what's the best. Like, yeah, obviously they dip off quite a bit. In the last 8 weeks, the number one stat coming into this event would be greens in regulation. Pretty standard. And again, all these have all the proximity buckets. I do not have putting buckets just because I think it's somewhat pointless, but we could definitely add that in the near future. When they start shifting surfaces, I just think there's a lot of noise in what the putting numbers could be like. And I'm talking like make rate from 5 to 10 feet. I mean, some guys could have like 6 putts. Some guys could have 20 putts. Some guys could have 1 putt in the last, 2 events. So yeah, going through each of those, my main takeaway here is looking at the top correlations and looking at, it's very broad. All these stats is what's going to be baked into the model that I loaded as a template today. So we'll look at that here in a second. As far as like the other stats that are just interesting and maybe lead you down a path, but I would just focus on the lead-in stats because that's apples to apples what we're looking at this week for the field, and that's what you would have used for any past years. Missed fairway penalty is actually down. So like the driving accuracy number, although it is much more difficult than a tour average, the missed fairway penalty is also down. Not quite the same amount, but it's still, less penalizing to miss a fairway. It's probably more so on which side you missed it on. Let's see if there's anything super interesting. No, I mean, like green regulations down, which is to be expected. Left rough tendency and right rough tendency is about the same. So 20% hitting in the left rough, 20% hitting in the right rough. Anything else that's interesting? Not really. Missed green regulation penalty is a little bit easier than the tour average. Basically just means that the scoring is not as difficult. If this was like, again, the American Express, missing a green costs you almost a shot or half a shot. This one, obviously, you miss a green, you scramble, you're not really losing much when all these holes are playing, 0.1 to 0.2 strokes over par. And I get it. If you're listening to this on the audio podcast, it's probably went through that super quick and might have defeated the purpose. But we'll look at the FGB Studio and talk through the top guys, and it'll make a little bit more sense. The other stuff I like to look at for the drive, like the course, is driving is probably the biggest factor for figuring out fit. This course, we have a driver profile, and it just runs from like basically 0 distance to 100% accuracy to 0 accuracy, 100% distance. This one is favoring distance, just slightly kind of in the middle. It's not all the way into the green for distance. If you can see it, if you can't see it, it's just kind of, we'll call it, I don't know, it's not on a clock. So pointing, pointing a little bit right of center favoring distance. It's very moderate. So it wouldn't give a super good lean to distance, but it doesn't hurt. It definitely favors it a little bit. But with saying that, the top guys in the world tend to be longer. So you're kind of double dipping in a sense. When you look at driver profiles, the distance kind of aligns to the best guys in the world. There's very few, like a pot guider who's not one of the best in the world that hits it super far. Most of those guys at the top hit it well above the tour average. Driving distance distribution, we have 290 to 310 as the main bucket. We have 8 tee shots there. 270 to 290, we have 4. And then 250 to 270, we have 2. You can see through here, hole 5 and hole 7 are the short ones. They hit a 255 off the tee and 263 off the tee. So obviously not drivers there. Looking at the 270 to 290 bucket, I could argue a couple of those are probably drivers. So like hole 18 plays uphill, 288, it's definitely drivers. You just can't hit it that far going up a hill like that. So I would say majority is definitely, it's driver heavy. You got 8, 9, 10, 11. I would say 11 drivers out of the 14 holes. Let's see, anything else, or 15 holes, whatever that number is. Won't really worry about the approach distance. It's definitely a longer approach course. So less emphasis on wedges, obviously, more emphasis on 150 to 200, and then 200 plus for some of the par 3s and the par 5s, obviously. But it's pretty, honestly, that's a pretty wide range of approach shots. The main takeaway there is basically anything over 150 is likely what they're going to have on majority of their approach shots. So if you're curious about that, if you want to use approach IQ, those are the buckets you want to look at. 27%, 25%, 25%, 150 up to 225. And I think that's about it for this. You can obviously go through the Course Preview Pro and look at the different stats and course versus tour, like putting stats, and see how like the made putt distance on this course is different than the tour average, etc. Won't get into all of that. Let's get to the point most people are wanting to know. FGB Studio, but let's first go to odds to price really quickly. So simply put, what this does is basically rank how DraftKings or FanDuel priced all the players, and then compare that to what Vegas has in terms of a rank. Now, it's pretty clean as you go down. There's obviously some guys that have similar odds. So like Fleetwood, Xander have the same odds currently, 22.5 to 1. But the main goal here is like, let's just see, that's not super cheap, guys that have like a big value change. So like Jacob Bridgman off of a good week last week has a drift up in his odds. His price is still 6,800. So he's got some value. Sam Stevens, Marco Pinge. The mid-price guys is kind of more what I'm concerned with. So like Ben Griffin, there's really not a huge odds disparity in any of these guys, to be completely fair. But Ben Griffin at 8,700 has got about a 4-spot difference. Harris English at 7,900 is a 4-spot difference. Cameron Young, who had 14 spots last week, has a 3-spot difference here. So no one really stands out. I'm not too concerned with the cheap guys. That's pretty easy to just get priced in like, the high or mid 6K range and be off, 5 to 10 spots. They're still pretty long odds. We're talking, Marco Pinge has a 6-spot advantage. He's still 175 to 1, but he's priced at 6,200. That's still not like a drastic odds discrepancy, if you will. Let's see what the other side is, though. Tony Finau, currently 226 to 1. Is that right? We have to look at the odds board here in a second. So the initial odds from DraftKings is 226 to 1. Priced at 6,800. So obviously some course history baked into DraftKings pricing. Odds do not agree with that. Shane Lowry also has a big drift down compared to his price. Thagala, Andrew Novak as well. All right, let's go into FGB Studio. Let's talk through some models and templates, since that's the new thing today. So templates, let's do, I've kind of already gone through this, so it's going to preload all of my Genesis Invitational stuff. Um, but basically, I'll just quickly walk through it. So if you're watching this on video, if you create, any event, any model, you go through here and add a model, standard model, approach, spike, driving IQ, etc. You can save that as a template and apply it to any future events. You go to apply template, you can find mine or any of your personal ones and apply it to any future events or past events. So it makes it very easy if you want to just, start in 2020 at the Genesis Invitational, build out what you think is a good model and see how the results look. Copy that as a template and then apply to 2021, apply to 2022, give you an idea of how that model did over X amount of years. So I kind of already did that, but let's go back to 2023. We can search events. So we'll do Genesis Invitational 2023. We'll load this up and I'll explain what I'm throwing in here this week so far. So I got 3 models. So you can see I have deep, mid, long, which aligns with these lead-in stats that we just talked about for is really top correlations, but you can call it best per stat if you want. So each of those and their respective timeframes. So we have deep. I have, let's see, tee to green, total, spectrum tee to green, spectrum total, birdie or better, bogey avoidance. Really simple. I did deep is last 2 years, last 100 rounds. Pretty straightforward. You can go through each of your models and see, you can rank, you can do percentile or rank, whatever you want to do. You can see last year, Scotty would have been number 1, or in 2023, I'm sorry, would have been number 1. He finished T12. Not very good. I mean, yeah, Scotty Scheffler had a bad week in 2023. For him being number 1 here, that's not a surprise. That's just part of golf. John Rahm won. He was number 4. Cantley was number 7. He finished 3rd. Zalatoris was 4th. He was 9th, and he finished 4th. You can go on down the board. You can do that in mid, which I have set at last 9 months, last 50 rounds, and long was last 12 months, last 100 rounds as well. You can go through each of these. Again, Rahm was pretty good in every single stat, Max Homa as well. And then we can get a summary. So if you want to do a quick look at, okay, I blended all these together. This is how I blended it. Deep, 50%, mid, 33%, long at 17%. And if you hop into the Fantasy Golf Bag Discord, we've had a lot of discourse around that already, but happy to answer questions and help you along the way. But this isn't verbatim. I'm not sure if verbatim is the right word in this context, but this isn't exactly how the Fantasy Golf Bag betting model and DFS projections are derived, but it's pretty close. It's basically a gradual decay from long-term form to near-term form. So you can see here in this blend of deep, mid, and long in those different stats in each of those models, you can see how number 1, or I should say, who finished 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever. John Rahm was 4th. Max Homa was 11th. Cantley was 9th. Zalatoris was 10th. So again, you're not perfectly predicting, 1st place to 10th place, but you should be pretty close, directionally accurate with your top guys in your model having good finishes. There's always going to be outliers. You could go through here and let's see, Sung JM was 6th and he finished 56. That's not good. That's just part of it. Tom Kim was 7th. He finished 45th. Part of it. You have a good mix of top finishers, a good mix of middle finishers. That's the difference between, using, predictive stats before an event and then what the actual outcome is. You're just trying to be directionally accurate. You're trying to predict the range of outcomes as closely as you can. Now, you can flip it the other way and say who was the worst in this. So if you think about you're trying to model an entire field, you go to the bottom here. There's all the worst players, a lot of missed cuts. There's a T45, a T67, a lot of missed cuts, T40. So from the context of what was my purpose in deriving this ranking, I wanted the best players that I predicted to finish the best to be near the top or in the top 10, top 20, whatever. And the guys at the bottom obviously should be the worst in the field. And that's exactly what this shows. all the worst ranking guys missed the cut. There's no needling around like, I don't know, Doc Redman's course history because the USAM was here and he had good history. I'm not doing any of that stuff. Like, it's all very, it's not granular. It's like a broad data brush over the entire field. I want the top guys to generally have the best finishes, which is what happened here. And the worst guys should be the worst. Now, if there's a guy down here that won or finished fifth, like, you don't throw out the entire model just because one random guy had a great week. That happens as well. That's golf. But large in a way, you should look through this and see most of the top guys all had good finishes. Now, with our templates, you can go to 2024 and do the exact same thing. So again, I already imported my template. You go to deep, mid, long, everything's the exact same. Same sample sizes, same weights, everything's copied over. And you could go through the finishes. So you got Hideki won. He was actually 22nd in the model. Like, okay, he wasn't a top 5 guy and won. Not going to throw this out. Let's look at, broader brush. Luke List, Zalatoris, not the best incoming form. Mid and long wasn't great for Zalatoris. He still played pretty well. Xander finished 4th. Cantley finished 4th. They were 3 and 5. Okay. Harris English was further down, 53rd and 54th. They had top 10s. Scotty Scheffler was number 1. He finished 10th. Again, just broadly speaking, we're looking through this and getting a feel for how I throw predictive out there. I try not to overuse it, but like, you're trying to rank these just like a betting model would rank these, or Vegas would rank these, right? Like, yeah, Scotty was number 1 for a reason. Did he win? No. I mean, we're not nailing this 1-to-1 all the way down, but broadly speaking, in this top 10 or top 20, we should be pretty close. We should have a lot of good finishers that closely align with our, you can call it percentile outcomes, whatever. Go to the bottom range. We'll just do rank one more time. Go all the way to the bottom. You can see there's some miscuts in here. A T24, T31. Nobody's really breaking the bank. Tom Hoagie and Harris English were like the best finishers way down the board. Everybody else in this range was pretty much as expected. So what does that mean? So basically, you can tinker with this all you want. We could add in, and we could even do it live. Let's say Approach IQ, right? You could do this proximity in any of those models. So you could do like a short-term model and look at proximity or for the last year. Approach IQ allows you to look at the shot location. So if, obviously most proximity is just all shots. Then there's a rough proximity and fairway proximity. This you can do, fairway, par 3s, first cut, whatever you want to do. We can do like the last 6 months just to get enough sample. And then we're really just worried about, clear this out and do long. 150, I'll even take these out. 150 to 225, right? So we'll add that in there. We can set a min threshold of 20 shots. We'll see what it looks like. Then we can add that if we need to. So you would add this in there. We can see how people finish that were doing good in those buckets. Like the top 5 right off the bat, nobody finished better than T16. Scotty Scheffler was top 6, and finished 10th. That was the best. So like right off the bat, no real signal from, the approach numbers. So we can weight these a little bit. We can do, let's take out strokes gain, green regulation. You can add those in and tinker all you want. Let's just do a simple look for podcast sake. So we're going to add in Approach IQ, fairway. Let's do first cut 2. The rough's short, par 3s as well. We'll run that. And then we kind of looked, the percentages were pretty close, so this probably doesn't really matter, but we can do like a little staggered look, roughly like that. Basically 150 to 175, a little bit more emphasis than 175 to 200, which has a little more emphasis than 200 to 225. And then we can see how that looks. So a little bit better. We got Sepp Straka missed the cut. He was 4th. Scotty Scheffler, T10. Tom Hoagie, 8th. Sam Burns, T10. So like not bad, not great. We go to the bottom. We got Jason Day finished 9th. Tommy Fleetwood finished 10th. There's some bad ones in there. So it's not completely trash, but you're missing a lot of good plays by trying to be super finite here. We can blend that with our main model and see if that helps at all. So we'll just add a little bit. Do about 15% and apply it. And see if that looks better or worse. Let me undo some of these favorites. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly didn't move. Most of these guys look pretty good anyways. Eric Cole, JT Poston, etc. It's hard to see exactly how much any of these guys shifted, but I would say you can look in the approach IQ column. Nothing really shifts so much where you're like, yeah, that's really the ticket. Because like a trade-off here, Tom Hoge and Jason Day. Jason Day's approach IQ for those buckets we just talked about, not great. He was 68th in this field. He finished 9th. He was mediocre in the other models. Tom Hoge was bad in the other models, but pretty good with approach IQ. He did finish 8th. Which one of those is, more predictive, or was it just a 1-year sample that Tom Hoge happened to play well that week? That's also a question mark that you would have to ask. Going down the board, let's see. A lot of missed cuts, though. So that actually helped the miscut number. That pushed Wyndham Clark down. Justin Thomas miscut. Chris Kirk miscut, etc. So, all right. So let's hop to current year, since most of y'all care about that. Then we'll just talk through the top guys. And then we'll do more of this tomorrow with the special guest, which would be fun. So again, I use the exact same stuff. I just applied the model, which is mine, but applied my model or template, I guess. So you can do the same thing. You go into FGB templates and apply the one I saved out there for this week. And it's got the same 3 models. You can add more if you want to tinker with it. Same weighting, deep, mid, long, skewed down. And this is where you can do ranking or percentile. And again, honestly, aligning somewhat closely with either DK or odds is ideal if you think about it from a betting perspective, which I think most people overlook anyways. You'll hear people talk about it all the time, but let's say you have a matchup, or even outright odds. I mean, outright odds, there's certainly some value if some guy's priced at 200 to 1 and you have him at 150 to 1. Like, there's value there. He's still 150 to 1, but there's value off of what Vegas has them. But let's say, like, I don't know, Tommy Fleetwood is at 10-3 and Rory McIlroy, probably a bad example. They're similarly priced. Let's say Ben Griffin and Russell Henley. You got Ben Griffin like number 1 or number 2, and you have Russell Henley down at 30th. Well, there's probably something wrong. You overshot something because Vegas doesn't agree with you. You can't be that far off. So like in the terms of like a betting model, if you add an outright or matchups, then let's say you try to calculate your EV on a matchup and say, wow, I got like a 60% edge in this matchup. Well, you probably messed up. There's no way you have a 60% edge, especially if it's in multiple matchups. You probably need to go back to the drawing board. You're overvaluing something that's, theoretically not valuable enough from a broad model standpoint. So it's very important. Like if you go through this, obviously people joke about Scotty being number 1 for sure. I mean, that's kind of a given. He's got a 1.5 stroke advantage per round over the next best guy in this field. If he's number 7 or something, you got a problem. And I'm sure there's something where he's not great at it. Like you could look at the approach IQ stuff. I'll just pull it up really quick. I'm sure there's some bucket. If we look at rank, do Scotty. Yeah, 150 to 175 strokes gained. He's 63rd. This is a short sample, but you get my point. 200, 225. He's 55th. So yeah, so something like that, you're going to go the wrong way. You're not benefiting yourself. So let me undo my approach IQ that I added in here. So going through this, I'll do it by salary and you can visually see it. And I'll just kind of highlight it. So basically we're in agreement with DK / Vegas because DK's algorithm closely aligns with Vegas. Scotty's number 1, Rory's number 3, Tommy Fleetwood's number 2, Xander's number 8, Russell Henley's number 6, Hideki's number 10. That's your 9,500 and up. So nothing really stands out there as crazy. Colin Morikawa has a nice dip up from his good form last week. And honestly, his long-term form is pretty good. He's 15th in the 24-month model. Just not good in the mid and the long. So basically over the last year, he's been worse than his, 1 to 2 year model. Let's see if anybody will go down. Like you can go through this. Like I said, you can basically just add this template and look at the exact same thing. But we can go through, we don't have finished positions yet because we haven't got there. But if you came back here on Sunday night and you're curious how this model did, very easy to just plug in the template, sort by finished position, and see how this actually did. Ideally, the goal is to have a handful of guys inside the top 10 or top 5 that are in our top 10. Hopefully the winner comes from here, but it's not a guaranteed thing. The winner could be 22nd, could be 30th. Obviously, we don't want him coming from like 50th. Otherwise, there was either a fluke or we messed up. We'll go down to like some values. Justin Rose still pretty good. Sepp Straka, a nice bounce up. JJ Spawn's still really good off the last year. I know people are tired of playing him because he seems like he is out of it quick on Thursday and then just kind of hangs around, and stats are good enough that he's still there. But yeah, JJ Spawn is 7th and he's at 7,500. So something to look at. Kurt Kitayama is 9th at 7,300. Pearson Cootie at 7,300 as well. He's playing great. And then as we go down, pretty much aligns with DK. Most, you'll see a lot of red here. See if anybody pops at all. No green. Just see if anybody reasonably top. Alex Noren at 7K. Ryan Gerard at 7,200. Taylor Pendrith at 7,200 is pretty much it. All these other guys are like, you can either probably X them out or just kind of favorite the guys inside the top 50 in your rankings and apply that in LineupIQ. But all in all, I mean, this is the top 10 I'll list out really quickly for those that do take notes, which was me several years ago for sure. And any podcast, diving into other sports especially. Scotty Scheffler's number 1, Tommy Fleetwood, Rory McIlroy, Siwoo Kim, Ben Griffin, Russell Henley, JJ Spawn, Xander, Kurt Kitayama, Hideki Matsuyama. That is your top 10 in this model, driven strictly by the lead and stat correlations. So I think that's pretty much it. Like there's really no nuance that I would really look at. Like I said, you can go back to any of the past years. You can go back to like some random 2019, 2018, whatever, and look at how this would have done. But that is where we stand. I know Fitzpatrick's getting some steam. Let's see if our odds are up. Line movement. Let's see what we got cooking. No movement yet. This is all off the initial odds. So I won't go through any of this. But again, you should be able to see this with the rankings, and they should be close. Like we should not disagree so much with Vegas that you have an issue. Again, I think people get blindly misled when, I don't know, probably not a great example I can think of anybody down here. Maybe Corey Connors, certain times where his stats look really good and he's like 5th in someone's model. Like that's not great when DraftKings or whoever has him priced at 110 to 1. Doesn't mean you can't bet that. Doesn't mean he's not a good play in DFS either. It just means that the overall model quality is probably questionable at best. Especially if you really start having a bunch of guys like Matt McCarty somehow 10th and Garrett Higo is 15th, and you got guys like Russell Henley 30th. Like you're going backwards. You're going the wrong way. So you can use Vegas, you can use DK pricing kind of as your baseline, and we don't want to agree perfectly, but we should definitely be similar, right? You should be at least mostly agreeing with the guys roughly in their top 10 or top 20, and the guys at the bottom should be at the bottom. We shouldn't have big disparities. So I think that's it. We can look at Spectrum really quickly from last week. and see, guys, we can just do last 1 week. So this is off of 4 rounds since they have Spyglass shot link. Now we can look at approach and off the tee or both. And here are the top guys with an edge. I also want to caveat this for our own members and everybody that uses Spectrum Edge. There can be a lot of value with guys that had lost a lot of shots because they hit, 1 or 2 shots in the ocean or out of bounds. They chunked a shot. We saw Henley, I think, do that last week. What I like to look at is not just strictly the edge, because even Spectrum will show these guys are losing strokes, right? Like Matty Schmid, he's got a 1.2 stroke advantage off of strokes gained. We still have him negative 0.4. Like that's still not a good sign. It's a better sign than what strokes gained has him. So take that for what you will. What I look for is a guy like Tom Hoagie, 1.1 last week, 1.2, and Spectrum has him at 1.8. That's a nice bump up. Justin Rose, 0.2, we have him at 0.8. And again, even our lead-in stat correlations didn't show either strokes gain approach or Spectrum approach is like a huge predictive or huge predictor. But you can still use this for your own. Like, I want to find an undervalued guy. Like this guy's, there's some trade-off with ownership too. Like, I don't know, maybe Matty Schmid's your guy, 6,100. No one's going to play him. Maybe you think there's something there. He's trending up. You could go back, another couple weeks and see if that's holding true. Same with off the tee. Schmid's actually positive off the tee versus what strokes gain has. So Schmid's kind of interesting. I wouldn't jam him into like 40% of lineups, but if you want a cheap punt, Schmid, probably a decent punt at 1% ownership. I don't know what his ownership's going to be, but I assume it's not going to be very, very much. And on down the board. So let's see. I think that's it for now. Yeah, we could jump into LineupIQ. Maybe we do that tomorrow with the guests. So 40 minutes. All right. So main takeaway, love this golf course. Any tough tests kind of proves its worth in just the better players are going to prevail. And whether that's you trying to pick out a winner and focusing on 40 or 50 to 1 and under, that's obviously a good starting point. You don't get any real fluky winners on a golf course like this, which is nice. Same with majors, mainly because the fields are stronger, but also the golf course is more difficult. You could fake it for a round or two. We see that in the US Open. You'll see some random guy shoot 66 or something, round 1 of the US Open. And they're just not going to hang around for 4 rounds. It just doesn't happen. So I love events like this. We got a couple coming up too with the Arnold Palmer Invitational, the Players Championship, obviously. We'll look at what the stats show for the Honda or Cognizant Classic, I guess it is now, Valspar as well. But yeah, this is a pretty good run of events we have coming up. So excited to kind of run through these. We obviously had some good momentum off of last week, so we'll keep that going. With that being said, guys, I think that's all I have for this show. Keep a lookout for the guest tomorrow night. It'll be a good one. All right, guys, best of luck. Thanks for tuning in as always. Appreciate it. And we'll see you later. Bye.